the whole idea of what you put out there comes back to you based upon what you do. If you put out negative energy, then you're going to attract, and negative meaning in darkness, confusion, what we term as adversity, right?
Right.
However, you also attract adversity from our previous generation. Because that adversity is in you. Example, why is it that we can accept the whole concept of being predisposed to alcoholism because someone else in our generational line was predisposed to alcoholism? Why? We can accept that. We can accept high blood pressure, we can accept heart disease, but why is it we cannot accept anything else? Because we don't want to. We do not want to take responsibility. And I'll give you a classic example of that. If you have hypertension, then and someone in your family had it prior to you, you say, well, I got it because my aunt had it. Or I have it because my mama had it. What you doing? You're putting it on someone else. In a nice way, but you're doing it. You're blaming someone else for what you're dealing with. Now, hypertension, heart disease, cancer, especially abdominal cancer, rectal, colon cancer, all these are in my bloodline. But none of them affect me. And I chose not to allow that even before I began to understand the scriptures the way that I do. I felt like I was not going to do it, and the way I began to combat that was I watched how I ate in terms of a lot of junk food. I watched my weight. People would say, well, you don't have to watch your weight. I really don't. But I do. Why? Because you don't want to get to the place where you do have to watch it. And then start having to deal with it, right? Mm-hmm. So if you deal with it now, you don't have to worry about it later. Now, if you take the physical things that I did based upon my earthly understandings of the body structure, then couple that with the spiritual understanding that I have now, and it is far more difficult for something like that to attack my body or to become a part of my body. Is it there? Of course it is. It's there. I mean, CEA cells are always in your body. You know, is it? Yeah. Carcinogenic, some E antigen. Yeah, it's always in your body. So it's how you deal with it. So why do some people get cancer and others don't? Well, if cancer becomes a part of your body in the adversarial way, or hold your body in a death grip, for lack of a better term, then is it because of something you did? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Maybe there's something else that needs to be corrected. Example, maybe that cancer that is attacking your body puts you in a position to be more compassionate with other people. Express compassion that you wouldn't express if you didn't have it. And I'll give you an example of that. One of the teachers, and I'm not talking about Carl, of course, one of the teachers, well, I'll say it because he did it publicly, ST was diagnosed with cancer. And that was like, what, 8 years ago maybe? Quite some time ago. But when he was going to the cancer center, he was talking to other people about his circumstance. And when they were asked him, well, how can you be so upbeat as young as you are and with the diagnosis that you're facing? And he said it's simply a diagnosis. And did not understand things from the place where we do now, but understood that it was not him who had cancer, it was the body. And he dealt with it that way. Now he has, the cancer's not there, But if he had not experienced that, then there would be some other people who were there with him he never would have met. He would not be able to encourage them. And there were some who ended up just like he did, the cancer completely out of their body. So things happen in our lives sometimes to put us in proximity to people who need us. I remember when I came out of the Army, my hand was broken, and I had to continue the treatment at the VA. And I had pins in my hand, and they did surgery to take the pins out because they were irritating me and they were always hurting. So they did a bone graft from my pelvic to my hand. And the whole time that I was there, I was kind of in a slump because that same weekend that they did the surgery, one of my best friends was getting married, and I couldn't go to the wedding. But there were two guys who was there with me in that particular room. Yes, it's a room because it's 4 people. And both of them were preachers. I had just gotten called into ministry, did not have a church. One of the preachers was an alcoholic. And he was in there because somebody had beat him up because he got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The other preacher had got shot in the leg because somebody's boyfriend shot him. And I'm landing here fresh in ministry, right? And I'm here with these two guys. And they are talking to me, and one of them was the Baptist preacher and was the Methodist preacher. But the Baptist preacher says that, well, I've been there X number of years, and most of the people in that church grew up under me. I'm fine. They're not going to do anything to me. The other guy said, well, if it's 100 churches in the district, I spend a year at each church. They find out what happened. They send me to another church. I'll be dead before I get to all of them. Or they just send me to a totally different district. And everything would be different. They don't know anything about me. You see what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. So I'm landing in this place, and I'm fresh in ministry now, and this is what I'm exposed to. So I have to make a decision whether or not I'm going to follow that energy, or I'm going to absorb that energy or not. You see?
Yes.
Now, I was put in that place to influence them as opposed to them influencing me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So things happen in our lives for the purpose of us being placed in circumstances and situations where we are an influence to other people or they to us. Because there was always a two-way street. And you have to make a choice. If the influence coming from the other person is a negative thing, then you have to make a choice to resist that because they're telling you that they need something from you in that area.
Okay.
But at the same time, they have to be willing to accept it. And most people will not accept it because they feel like they're right no matter what. Most people like that. And if they accept it, a lot of times they'll never come and tell you they accept it. And it doesn't matter whether they tell you or not. The only thing that matters is whether or not they accept, the change. That's the only thing that matters. Everything else is pretty much insignificant. So, again, there are things like that happen in our lives that happen just to put us in proximity to other people for the purpose of being influenced or being a influence. Does that help?
Yes.
And it doesn't, and see, we see this, we like, my God, so I had to be diagnosed with cancer in order for me to be an influence. Well, if you really believe that you are who you say you are, then this body is insignificant anyway in terms of your purpose for being here. It's not insignificant in that you should abuse it, but in terms of your being here. Because if if that's the case, then why is it that a 2-month-old baby died, or why is the baby stillbirth? What's the stillbirth? There are reasons for these things. You see? And all of them, we don't necessarily know, but we trust that there are reasons. And most of the time, if we would just be still and look back at what has transpired in that person's or our lives or people around us, then we begin to see what kind of influence it had. It's like if a child is killed in an accident, what you hear most of the time is that those parents are either going to come closer together or they're going to divorce. It does not remain the same. Now, whether they get closer together or divorce depends on the influences that have been in their lives or the influences that are in their lives. So, any other questions about that? No other questions? Okay. Last week, we talked about, what's the doc? Can you come? Will. We talked about will last week. That will be done in earth as it is in heaven. That's what we talked about.
Concept.
Okay. We understand. We begin to understand that will has more to do with desire or the wish rather as opposed to something that's forced on you. The objective was to get us to see that you do not have to run around searching for the will of God for your life, especially if you're doing it in conjunction with what is written in this attitude towards prayer. This attitude towards prayer talks about the will being done. Is saying that let your wish for us in this earth consciousness be the same as your wish is for us in the place of enlightenment. That's what he's saying. It is the Father's will that you have the kingdom. Is the example that we used last week. It means that it is the Father's desire that we become aware of the kingdom. Does that make sense? Huh?
Yes.
So if it's the Father's desire that we become aware of the kingdom, then we do not have to search for what that will is. The Father would not have a will for our lives and not show it to us. And we run around saying for the rest of our life, I want to know what the will of God is for me. I want to know what the will of God is for me. And think the will of God for you is to it is where it is reflected in where you are employed, or is reflected in what you do, be it on the choir, usher, etc. That is not the will. It has nothing to do with the will. Your vocation has everything to do with your location, and location meaning your physical presence in the earth. It maintains your physical presence in the earth, and wherever you are located, that place of employment or those encounters that you have are opportunities for you to be expressive of the desire that you recognize the desire of the Father for you. What am I saying? If we are talking about the will that will be done on the earth as in heaven, if we're talking about the desire, we're saying that your attitude must be that the desire for this earth consciousness is the same desire of the heavenly consciousness. You understand what I'm saying? That you desire in this earth consciousness what is in the heavenly consciousness. Now keep in mind, these are not words to be uttered. Prayer is not spoken. Jesus said, don't be like the hypocrites standing on the corners and in the synagogues praying. They believe that they are rewarded by virtue of the number of words or the words that they speak, but they already have their reward. So when you pray, go into your closet, and he who sees in secret will reward you in secret. You see? Does that make sense?
Yes, but you kind of lost me on the location.
Okay, location is, when I talk about location, of course I'm talking about the physical presence in the earth. When I'm talking about vocation, your job is to keep you in the earth. That's it. You don't have a job because that's God's will for you to have that job.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
What you do on that job is expressive of the will. The way you handle it is expressive of the will. That is the reason, especially the people that I cover, a lot of other people don't talk to me about it, but the people I cover, usually they become very unhappy with their jobs. And always want another one. And it doesn't change until they resolve themselves to be there and do what needs to be done while they're there. And it has nothing to do with Montessori teaching or building a website. Nothing at all.
But isn't that the same principle though in anything once you commit to living that type of life? Anything that's earth related, you got to be resistant.
Yes.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you've committed yourself to truth and knowledge and understanding who you are relative to the Creator, but the very reason that you do that causes things not to go easy for you necessarily, as it relates to this earth consciousness.
And I will correct
That's the
one
principle.
thing. It's not necessarily. Things just don't go.
Yeah.
There is total resistance constantly.
So we should expect it.
Yeah, you resolve yourself to expect that. You know, I mean, I was speaking with George yesterday, and I was saying to him that I just don't allow things to bother me. Doesn't matter what happens in my life. It may hit me for a second, but beyond that, I'm done. If I can't figure out what to do with it or how to approach it, then I'm not supposed to. So it'll work itself out. And whatever it is, it just doesn't matter anymore. Now, are there things that hurt me? Of course there are. But they don't destroy me and they don't stop me in my tracks. Because if something happened to me right now, then 5 minutes from now, I'm still in this place where it happened if I allow it to. So what happens to that span between the 5 minutes? It's wasted. I didn't get anything else done. So I cannot live in that moment. I must live in this moment. So, and I had some encounters, and one of the things, Ron and I was talking about some other stuff, and it morphed from the idea of prayer into the understandings of what I'm about to say. First of all, it is easier for a non-believer to accept this attitude that's being taught concerning, Matthew 6, 8 through whatever, right, than it is for believers. Because as Christians, believers think that if you don't say the words, you're not praying. When Jesus clearly says it's not words, it's an attitude. That's clearly there. Now, I was sharing with him that I have been through 3 phones. And I had one phone. I bought a battery pack case for it, the out-of-box battery pack thing, and it began to mess up. So I took it in, and they sent me another phone, and that one began to mess up. Matter of fact, I couldn't even, the frequency on it was so out of whack, I could even turn the button on to connect to Bluetooth or to the internet. Okay. So, they sent me another phone. And that phone was just as happy with me. I didn't use the battery pack. I gave it back and got me a regular case. And it was just as happy with me. But Thursday night, I was lying in bed. The fan was on with the light. So I turned the light out. I got up, I turned the light out. I pulled the string, you know, turned the light out. I laid back down, and I was lying there, and about 5 or 10 minutes later, the light came back on. It just said, psh, it came back on. I'm like, what the?
The ceiling fan?
Yes!
The light
It came back on. Ceiling fan light came back on. So I lay on my back looking at the light. I said, okay, now, what happened? Why did this come on? So I go through, you know, all of the electrical, you know, the wiring stuff, And then I said, all right, if I turn it back on, I'll be able to turn it back off. And I laid there, and it went back off when I got up and turned it back off. Now, why did I tell you that? Because since that happened, my third phone, I pick it up the next morning, right? And now they call it error. I called Bessie yesterday.
Oh.
They're calling people up randomly. The frequency is shot. It just done. It not only does it call people, Sarah was asking me what I want her to do. I turned it off. I go into status and turn it off, right? And now Sarah said, you want to make a voice call? I'm like, are you kidding me? So what do? If I'm not talking to anyone, I just turn the phone off completely. So I'm going to take it back today, and we're going to shoot for number 4 and see what happened with it. Now, if
You really need that phone?
it might be one of my friends are working and I don't know it. But, okay, I said to Ron, an atheist scientist would believe what I'm about to say more so than someone who is saved or who's Christian. I believe that the aura, the electrical impulses of my aura affected that light. That's what brought it back on. And it's been affecting my phones. I believe that. I do not believe, if I go to church and say that, they're going to call me crazy. But if I say that Jesus could do that, it probably would happen with him. It'd be fine. But it can't happen with me. But the scripture says not only will you do it, but greater things you should do. So why not me? Now, what do I do with that? I haven't the slightest idea, other than to go get me another phone. And once I came to understand or accept what was going on, this morning when I got ready to leave, I knew I couldn't use my phone because I might call anybody. So not only that, when people call me and they say that they could not complete the call as dial. So, but anyway, I started to get my iPad and I said, no, I'm going to leave it alone with that.
You just need to replace that too.
I'm not going there. I do, but I'm not, yeah. So, so what am I saying? When your attitude changes about who you are, about what prayer is, about what the will is, how you live in this earth, everything about you comes into balance, and the unicity that we seek with the Father is realized. It's not that we don't have it, we just are not aware of it, or we are not ready to accept it on a continuous basis. So that changes, and I was thinking as I was speaking that shalu, the Aramaic word for prayer, talks about to lie in wait, or to capture, as in capturing the enlightenment, or to lie in wait for the enlightenment, to to make itself aware to you. And the more that transpires, the more encounters that I've begun to experience. I accept it, but I don't have a choice. I mean, what else am I going to do? I don't know anyone who has had 3 phones in such a short period. This is January 19th. So it had not even been a month that I've gone through this month being my third phone. So anyway, if anyone has any suggestions, maybe I need to put it in a lid box and put it in my pocket.
Did you try to sharpen my razor blade for me? Just pull out there a little bit.
We put it right here. Yeah.
I just use it to method.
So that's where I am with that.
That was my first thought, that it's energy.
Yeah. So that energy is not an amount, it's a presence, it's awareness, it's an acceptance, it's a desire, and anyone can be in that same place, you know? It's not just me. It's anyone can be in that same place. But so we talked about the will. What else did we talk about? We talked about the will. Oh, then we talked about the earth. When we talked about the earth consciousness, we were talking about the whole idea of the atom consciousness, actually, because the earth consciousness is the Adamic awareness. It is being more aware of being human than it is of being Elohim. Is more aware of being physical than it is being spiritual. More aware of the material world than we are of the spiritual world. And that awareness of this material world is what claims so much of our attention until we neglect who we really are. And when I speak towards to the Adamic nature, I'm not talking about the idea of the image in which we were created. We were created in the image of Elohim, right? But just because you're created in the image of something, it doesn't mean that you're reflective of that image. You have free will. Even though the Adam was created in that image, it was given free will to remain the Adam or to be one with Elohim. You understand what I'm saying? But it chose to be the Adam. And as a result of that, we have this earthly awareness, which is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, with waiting for us to transform this earth consciousness to that of enlightenment, which is the tree of life itself. But we cannot do that by virtue of following the discourse of religion based upon doctrines of men or denomination of doctrines, as opposed to the doctrines or the principles of the kingdom. The transformation will never take place. And if we don't know what the basic principles are in regards to the kingdom, then that transition or that transformation will never take place. It will never happen. And one of the major tenements that we have to hold on to is this whole concept of prayer is not saying words.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you get a group of people together, you want to pray. How do you kind of align everyone, or how do you reach an agreement about prayer, about what's...
I'm sorry.
How do you reach an agreement about the prayer if there are no words out loud anyway?
Because your spirit is lying wait and wait for the enlightenment, right? And if everyone understands that prayer is about breathing, and or it's about if you're going to say anything, it's a focus on a boom, then the spiritual essence of our being connects with everyone else. When you say to me, I need you to help me with something, and I say to you, okay, I got it, I don't do a thing. I don't do a thing. Why? Because my primary motive is to bring light to that circumstance that you're dealing with, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my desire, so it happens. Now, if we are together and we are praying, then, thank you. If we are together, and that just irritates me. If we are together and we are praying, and I say to you, this is what prayer is, and we began to breathe in unison, or we be as one, I should say, then what we are actually doing is inhaling the life or the light or the aura of each other.
But there has to be a stated intention though, right?
It can be, it doesn't have to be. When, for example, this morning, I began to consciously recognize the breathing, and I did that in terms of moon, etc., right? Mm-hmm. And I had no intent at all other than for whatever I need for this day, of course. I see it. That's it. I don't, it's not like, well, I'm going to pray for everybody with cancer. I'm going to pray for, that the winter games in Sochi be safe. That is not like I'm doing that. If you follow the course of what Jesus did in relationship to prayer, who did he pray for? You see?
Who did he pray?
The closest you get to that, I'm sorry.
But who did he pray for?
He prayed for those who the Father had given him. In John 17, that's the closest you get to him praying. But they were recorded as words that he said, right? My point is this. Where does revelation come from?
The source? Or
It doesn't come from you talking.
no?
You see?
Yeah.
So if revelation comes from, is present in the realm, and you have to be still in order to become aware of it, it doesn't mean that it came to you. You became aware of its presence. And that's the same thing with situations and circumstances in our life that we deal with. The intent, if my intent, set your intent and just be. My intent is always to bring order. Period. Always. That's go ahead.
And I think that's what the speaking silence is all about. That we don't have, in the physical, we kind of trust words more than we trust in a lot of other things. We trust the words to structure what it is we're supposed to be thinking about. We trust the words to structure how we feel. Mm-hmm. The thing that spiritual breathing allows is freedom from the structure of the physical, which means then that opens you all the way up. It is about just intent. Your heart is, the intent of your heart is simply to connect and to be one. So if everybody has that same intent and wisdom is allowed, then what we're doing is creating that space for wisdom. And like Pastor said, revelation just comes, that wisdom that everybody receives, puts us all on the one accord. Not the structure in our words, but the freedom to accept and receive the same or similar thing at the same time is what puts us on that same plane, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Not plane, but
Yeah.
one accord, same accord, similar accord, that accord, it's accord, it's accord.
Yeah. I got you. The intent. This is what happened. Your circumstance may be different than mine, and everyone in this room have a different issue that they're dealing with, right? But guess what? Everyone in the room has the same intent. Order. That's isn't it? Balance. That's the intent of everyone in the room. The issue that you're dealing with is not just for you. It's for the whole of mankind. And when we deal with it just for ourselves, that's selfishness. I've said this for many, many years, and I did not really understand the real essence of what I was saying when I began to say it. I don't ask God for anything. I don't pray to ask for anything, period. I don't. And if prayer is words, show me how to pray without ceasing. But that's what the scripture said, right? So show me how to pray without ceasing.
I was going to say, when we get to a point where we really pray from our internal space,
That's the closet.
and for me,
That's the closet.
yeah, and I think for you too, it's hard to articulate what it is
Yeah.
you want to say. So, I mean, for me, that is real prayer, when I get to that place where I can articulate it. I mean, so it's not about me allowing my ego to pray.
Yeah.
It's just when I get to that place where I can articulate it, and I just have to rely on the fact that the Ein Sof knows what it is I need to say without me saying it.
Well, we know that too. We know that. Because we say, well, I know what I feel, but I don't have the words for it. I can't put it into words. We say that all the time. I don't know how to express it. And anything that deals with the spiritual is extremely difficult to articulate. Tell me, if love is an emotion, right? You don't see an emotion. You see a manifestation of it. So explain to me what love is or what anger is. You can tell me what causes anger, causes you to become angry, or you can see manifestations of it, but what is it? And the best thing we can say about it is that it's imbalance, it's chaos, it's darkness. You see? So we see expressions of it, and what we have done, because we have not stepped back from it and thought about it, we think that we know what anger is, but anyone would tell you, I really don't know what love is, but I know it when I feel it, when I experience it. And the only reason we do that is because we have been hurt by love and stepped back to try to figure out, what is this thing? But with anger, we haven't done that. We haven't done that. And so with every emotion, I think that should or needs to be done. Then we get to the place where we realize that there is no clear way of articulating the spiritual things that we experience. That's the Sheldon thing. That's your hand. Go ahead.
One thing I was about to say in regards to a large group of people or a group of people getting together and pray, everyone already does that or are aware of them doing it if explained. And it's the same thing when a group of people see something take place all of a sudden and everyone's heart goes to the same place. It happens in sporting events when you gasp for a breath of air and it just takes everyone's breath away. All of those things taking place in that moment, everyone, in a sense, are meditating together, regardless of what they're actually meditating or praying on, but they are doing that. It was the same thing that happened with 9/11 across the world.
Everyone took a deep breath and everyone was on the same page for a little while. And you could feel it. You couldn't articulate it, but you could feel it. It was, and the weirdest thing that happened is that all of a sudden I was at a car dealership with Malika's car when it happened. And I remember having seen it on TV, and of course there were no brakes in it. And I stepped outside. And the weirdest thing, I experienced the weirdest thing. It felt different because there were no planes in there. It just, that's the first thing that came to my mind, that there are no planes in there. And my next thing was I came to a place of almost panic because Malika was in Texas, I believe she was in Dallas, and Lola was in Texas, I think he was in Houston. And you could not call into D.C., neither could you call out of D.C. And I remember, because I was trying to find out, of course, some stuff. But I remember talking to Malika saying, well, you need to get with Lola. So I called Lola, he's going to run a car, and then we'll connect. But other things happened, so they didn't have to. But during that whole period of time, it was like everything stood still. Everything. Like everyone stood still. And there was nothing moving, and when something did move, like everyone was moving, as one unit. That was but think about the reason that happened. It did not happen because we loved each other so much. It happened because of a tragedy. It happened because something was destroyed. Not the buildings, the lives. And when you think about it, what can you do, or what can someone do to you to make it okay for you to sit in a cockpit of a plane and hit a building at 600 miles an hour, watching the building come? It's hard for us to fathom, isn't it? Why? Not only is it different culturally, but it's also different spiritually in terms of our focus and how we think about things, how we perceive things. It's different. Now, there are some people who they understand that because they can do that, but I'm not the one. I'm not the one to strap a bomb and man walk any place. I ain't gonna walk out the door with it. I'm not the one. My folks expect me to come back home.
Sheldon, Heather.
Okay, go ahead, Sheldon.
I'm finished, sorry.
Oh, okay. So,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
So then, how do we integrate what we've been saying about a state that is prayer or prayerful, and the idea of rocking at the Wailing Wall or chants? Now, I put the two together because I'm not sure whether a particular Buddhist chant it's sound, it's certain sounds that resonate, that come out of cavities in your body that vibrate, and I haven't stood at the Wailing Wall of Jerusalem. Not yet.
Okay.
Well, I built one in the living room, but it didn't have the same.
Didn't work,
thing.
yeah.
Didn't work.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then I had to move it before I came home. But the notion of words, or words to which we give certain meanings, because we go way back to what we talked about in the earlier days here, we were talking more about letters, sounds, the Hebrew alphabet, etc. So there is obviously a place for sound, and I'm not sure where to go with this, but it's sound, but sound shaped a particular way in what we call a letter or a word.
Yes.
and obviously the physical manifestation is that is a resonance. So if that's just a physical equivalent for a spiritual something, then where am I trying to go with this? Is that a function of that is enhancing? It's an enhancement?
Words, Aramaic words, Hebrew words, force you to breathe deeper. The vibration is deeper than it is with English. English is very shallow. It's shallow in terms of speaking it. It's also shallow in terms of articulation or explanation of things. Very shallow. But the Eastern languages especially forces you to breathe deeper. So even speech is about prayer. It's about breathing. It is, if we are spirit, and if we are spirit, and spirit is breath or air, all those words are the same, right? So if the deeper you breathe, the more that you are able to bring a spiritual awareness to you that is reflected or manifested in your body. Example, when you breathe, what are you doing? Every single cell in your body has to receive from what you inhale, does it not? Because if you put a tourniquet on my leg, it doesn't matter how much I breathe. If the air, if the breath, the oxygen, if it doesn't get to that point, it dies, doesn't it? So the breathing is what keeps you alive. And I believe when you're aware of the breathing, the depth of your breathing, and the purpose of it, it is almost like a cleansing. And I use the word cleansing for lack of a better term. It's right now in this room, because we speak English, usually when we do breathe deep, it's because we become conscious of it. But just ordinarily, we don't. Well, if we had to speak a language where you have to breathe deep, then the resonance is different, the vibration is different, the rhythm is different. And the rhythm, the vibration, with languages, especially Western languages, it is quite different than it is with the Eastern, which means that it has quite a different effect, spiritually as well as materially.
The thing I was thinking about when you were saying that is, just like if you use the analogy of breathing, if you diaphragmatically breathe, as opposed to more often, particularly sitting the way I am,
Right.
You're breathing with your upper chest cavity. You don't breathe as profoundly, you're not inhaling. So if you make that an analogy, then I would say the idea of the chanting or the use of words, sounds, and all that is, it just like the breathing gives you a more profound, but what happens after that is still,
And that's shalom.
it's just the broken vessels, it's the space, etc. But what you do with it is still you, right?
Yeah.
But it puts you in a place where, like I said, you're more open.
See,
And I think
With
it
the
also cuts
vocabulary.
off distraction too.
Huh?
Because somebody can also reduce the distractions that come.
Oh, he
because
does.
You're chanting, and you're saying a word, you may not even understand the word,
Yeah.
but other distractions are not there. So it may get you out of the place of the external a lot quicker too.
when you're in your closet, when you're inside yourself, when you are open, however you want to term it, you don't have to concern yourself with the words. Why? Because he's able to interpret your moans and your groans. That's scripture. The scriptures are replete with expressions of prayer that does not lend itself to words. And when we speak words, I mean, listen to Richard. Richard's vocabulary is extensive, but yet he struggles to express the spiritual. All of us at some point have struggled with this. We struggle with this, and the struggle that we have with it is that we've been taught to pray with words, and every time we start saying words, other stuff starts invading. But when we begin to breathe deeply, whether we're saying a boom, which is the focus, or whether we're not saying anything, which is also a focus, just being aware of the breathing. When we do that, these things don't invade. At least my experience has been that, the things like the scrimmage that the Seahawks had with the Broncos last week, they don't invade. You know,
What happened?
You are watching the Daily Show. Okay.
Yeah, the scrimmage that
Great.
we had with that the Broncos had. I mean that the Seahawks they beat so bad, and the game was over at the beginning. My point is this: you don't worry about whether you left your stove on or not. You don't think about whether or not the car will stop on you. You don't. All these things that come to you. How many of you have prayed and had stuff coming to you?
Yeah.
All of us, right? And we try to block it, right? Now, why would we try to block it? Because something in us tells us that prayer is about being in the moment, not in the future, not in the past. It's about being in that moment. It's not about what happened to you yesterday. Neither is it about what happened to you is going to happen to you in the next 10 minutes, or where you plan to be, or your next meeting. That's not what it's about. It's about the moment. Not the next moment, this moment. That's what it's about. Being focused on this moment. Because this moment does not belong to any individual. It belongs to all of us. Elohim. That's why the word Elohim is plural. Elohim is plural. It is not talking about God. It says gods, if you translate it properly. One yet many. So if it's one of us focusing, we are for the many, then it has an effect on all of us. That is one of the reasons we can say a slang word on the East Coast and be on the West Coast. And nobody sent an email saying this is the new word. But it happens. Why? How can it be? Because we are all one. I try to stay away from the interconnected thing because I believe that it's deeper than just being connected. Because anything that's connected, you can disconnect. I believe that we are one. And I believe that we were created to be one. And that is the reason one man walking around with 12 dudes can change the world. And one woman. One dude walk around with 12 dudes and one woman. Can change the focus of everything.
Just one woman?
That's all it took.
You know what I'm saying? Weren't there some more?
No, I'm talking about on a continuous basis.
Okay.
Yeah, there were other like Shalom,
Mary had her own people.
which is come from Shalom, huh?
I said Mary had her own people, didn't she?
Yeah, but I'm talking about. Don't let me go. Don't fool me over there. I'm trying to make a point metaphorically. Okay. So, yeah, right. And if you had let me make my point is that it only took a small amount of feminine energy or presence in order to bring balance, or to change the earth. When you look at what actually transpired, so it's not so much about numbers as it is a recognition of no matter what we do or seek to do, it always takes a woman.
Well, I mean, it was more, I think she had to bring the balance of their feminine energy. She had to
Well,
help
okay.
bring them to balance.
I like that. Bring the balance of their feminine energy. Why? Because even at that point, it had become a man's world. But it would be nothing with a woman or a girl.
That sounds so profound.
But
Okay, thank you, please.
it did bring that back, and right now that's a lot of what's happening now, because when you hear them talking about equal pay for equal work, it's simply an expression of a spiritual necessity. It has nothing to do with this. It's bigger than money. It's more important than 77 cents to $1. You know, it's far more important than that. But if it doesn't matter, as long as it's being floated, as long as it's a part of the discourse. Why? Because if you bring balance, earth into material thing, if that's what you're trying to do, that is fine. I do believe that an upsurge of this seeking to bring balance to femininity, if you look at it, if you can go back in your notes and look at the upsurge in it, it was a lot of what we've been talking about. Bringing balance, the feminine bringing balance, because men have just messed up everything. Masculine energy has been dominant. Now, if you also look at it from the political perspective, there are more female voters than there are male. I mean, that's a constant theme. Think about it. So all of these things are there in our face that we look at and we put we see them as being political or economic or social, when in essence it is a manifestation of spiritual truth. And earlier I was speaking with Vermel before we began recording, I think it was, and we were talking about how when you're in contact with someone, how you influence their world. And we were talking about the difference in compassion. And she was saying that, just because if I allow someone to take advantage of me, or I realize that that's not compassion, I told her, no, absolutely not. Because you're not having compassion for yourself. And if you don't have compassion for yourself, you don't recognize anyone else. And you're not expressing it to them either. What you're doing is submitting. And the only thing that you submit to is truth. That's it. You submit to light. Period. Everything else you're supposed to overcome. So when we look at it from that perspective, how do we overcome it? We recognize what's happening, or we are made aware of what's going on, and then we wait for the wisdom to deal with it, and once the wisdom comes and we begin to speak it, then what we're doing, we're bringing what? Understanding. And it's the wisdom and the understanding that allows a significant manifestation to take place to the extent that it is recognized by others. They don't know what they're seeing, but because they don't know what they're seeing, they name it. They call it whatever they want it to be to make it easier for them to recognize. So, there was something else that came to me during that. Anyway, okay, where are we? Any questions? Because I'm anxious to talk about bread.
Can you back up a little bit? You said something that when you were talking about English versus Eastern languages, and you said the Eastern languages have a greater effect. No, I don't know if it was the language or the breathing, but anyway.
It's the breathing.
You said it had a greater effect spiritually and materially.
On the material body.
Okay, physical.
On the physical body. If the more shallow you breathe, if you just begin to breathe shallow, right,
Mhm.
or hyperventilate, which is shallow breathing, you get dizzy because you're not supplying the body, the brain. And see, the thing with the brain is that you say, well, I'm not getting enough oxygen to my brain, but your body's telling your brain you need some more oxygen. So the deeper you breathe, the more effective you are in terms of the material you.
Is that what the bag is for?
Yeah.
Is
Now,
it hyperventilate?
to get carbon dioxide.
Oh.
yeah. See, the brain has to have a certain amount of carbon dioxide. Right, Bob?
Or you won't, you won't inspire.
Yeah.
You need respiration.
Yeah. That's what triggers it. And again, we talked about it last week. What are you breathing? What are you doing? Your body. See, it is not. You are allowing your body to live by virtue of partaking from you. If you are energy, if you are spirit, right, then this aura, this energy, this spirit that you are is entering this body in order for this body to live. So you are allowing the body to live by entering it. And the only known recorded case that I know of people who were able to hold their breath or to stop the body from living by not allowing it to inspire were slaves on the ship. That's the only recorded, those are the only recorded people I know of.
Oh,
Now,
they
there may
hold
be
their
others,
breaths
of
and
course.
die?
Huh?
They can hold their breath and
Hold
die?
the breath and die. Yeah. Yeah. Those are the only ones that I've ever heard of. Which means that, boy, you really, really don't want to be there. So, but anyway, where am I? Bread. I want to talk about this for a few minutes. We made mention of the idea of bread. We talked about it for a little bit last week, did we not? Give us this day our daily bread. The perception of bread from an Eastern perspective is different than our perspective of bread. Bread in the East is seen as a basic staple. And when bread is baked, it is baked for that day. The flour is not bleached. It doesn't have the preservatives in it, so they can put it in a plastic bag and keep it all week. And the whole idea of bread also carries the belief or the connotation that bread is the thing that the Creator gives us for basic sustenance. It's the basic thing that we get for life, bread. Every culture uses bread, but Western cultures do not see bread the way Eastern cultures do. In the East, how you pronounce it? B-O-U-D-I, Bodin, in the deserts.
Bedouins?
What one? B-E-D?
What?
O.
B-O.
Bedouin?
Yeah.
Bedouin?
Bedouin.
Bedou?
Bedou. Okay. They when they traveled the deserts, they carried bread in pouches, and it served to keep them nourished as they made their long journeys. We see bread as something to make a sandwich with, or we see bread as something that belongs to us, but the Eastern people saw bread as something also to be shared with a stranger, or to share with someone who just appeared in the middle of the night of the day. So, also they believed that they believed that bread was to be reverenced, not because it was bread, but because of the source. Behind the bread was the grain. Behind the grain was the ground. Behind the ground is the sun. Behind the sun is the Creator. So they saw it as a source. The source of the bread is what made them look at it as something to be reverenced. It had to have a strong meaning, a significant meaning to life itself, because of the way that it is dealt with throughout the scriptures. Bread of life. The reference is made constantly to Jesus, or to his essence as being the bread of life, is it not? And when it talks about him taking the bread and eulogizing it, because he said when he broke it, he prayed. That word pray is not salute, it's to eulogize. It's to say something good about. And of course that carries it back into Psalm. When he talks about what is man in the heart mindful of him. We're talking about it. So the bread of life, the basic sense of bread itself, is deeply intertwined with life. I want to say something here, but I would allow me to give me a minute to talk to you about what the expression of it. Jesus said that man cannot live by bread alone, but from every word that proceeds from the mouth of God, right? Now, there are people who don't know this, but Jesus was not making something up. That was not fresh revelation. Jesus was repeating what Moses said in Deuteronomy 8:3, in the B part of that verse. So that wasn't revelation. He was saying what he had read, or what he had been taught. The other thing to keep in mind is that these things, or these words that were used, had to be common words with common beliefs, because the overwhelming majority of the people couldn't read. I mean, there was no classroom where you go to public school and and the bus picks you up and take you to the synagogue. I mean, if you didn't have money, you didn't read. So there had to be common words. So when he spoke, common people, everyone had to understand what he was saying, or had to have some sense at least of what he was saying. And that's important to keep in mind. And I believe, and help me if I'm wrong about this, that the whole concept of give us this day our daily bread is saying, give us what we need for this moment. When we go beyond the moment, we begin to move toward greed. I want all I can get for me and mine. And if you get it, fine. But I want what I want for me. If we live by the creed of give us this day our daily bread, then we don't have to worry about greed and selfishness. Give us this day our daily bread is not talking about what you say. It's talking about having the attitude of seeking ye first the kingdom of God and the righteousness. All this other stuff will be added. Same principle. Can you see that? That's the same principle. If you live by that principle, seeking the kingdom, seeking the principles of the Creator and justice for all, as a matter of fact. Because if you read a psalm, it talks about not seeking justice on behalf of the wicked is what made us, cause us to die as prince of men. So this idea of attitude about bread is an attitude that says, don't try to preserve for tomorrow what's needed for today. Why? Because tomorrow has enough evil of its own. Does it not say that? The word evil speaks of unrightness from a literal translation of it. So tomorrow has enough unrightness of its own. So don't try to preserve it for tomorrow. The other thing is this: if you make an attempt to take what's there for tomorrow and use it today, it's not right. If you can look at it from the perspective of going to Whole Foods and buying a banana, is probably all we can afford. And the banana is not completely ripe, it'll be ripe tomorrow. You lay it on the counter for tomorrow, right? But if you eat it today, it's not ripe for the day. That's kind of a sense of what I'm trying to get us to see when it comes to giving us this day our daily bread. It's an effort to have us to live in the moment and to understand that there is absolutely nothing that you have need of that the Father is not aware of. Jesus also said that in this same chapter where we get in these words from what is called the L-rds Prayer. And it is a continuous thought that runs throughout the scriptures. The Lord is my shepherd, therefore I have no lack. Because Yahweh shepherds me, there's no lack in my life. That's what it said. So our attitude cannot be focused on how am I going to make it tomorrow. How many of you in this room have had issues that you were dealing with and you got all these preconceived ideas about how it's going to turn out and how you're going to say this and I'm going to say that, and then tomorrow when you get there, none of that happens. You walk in and all of it is taken care of. So what were you trying to do? You were trying to live in an unright time. You were trying to live in tomorrow, and all these things that you had were unright. They were evil. They were confusing. They were darkness. So if you don't readily see it, then let it go. And letting it go means that every time it comes up to you, you say, no, I'm not going there. Why? Because if you don't readily see it, then it must not be for you to see. And I have had situations, and I talk about me because I don't know all this stuff about you, where there were things I was dealing with, I didn't see how to handle it, I didn't let it go. And then somebody would call, and in the course of the conversation, they would say to trigger it, or they would, give me the answer or bring clarity to what I was seeking. It happens like that. Now, guess what? When that happened, the person who called was calling me. And when the call came, it was today. It was this minute. It's not this day and tomorrow. It's not talking about after the night passed, tomorrow go be here. It's talking about this moment, living this moment, and not the next moment. What you're going to be doing at 4 o'clock this evening is tomorrow. That's the sense of tomorrow. That's the sense of what he's speaking of tomorrow. It's an attempt to make sure that we live in this moment. Why? Because those who acquire or make an attempt to acquire everything that they think they're going to need move to a place where that becomes their focus. And when things become your focus, then truth doesn't prevail. And when truth does not prevail and things become your focus, you find you're on a slippery slope of doing whatever it takes to get it, which results in the disintegration of society, or results in, or it leads to chaos, and it also leads to wars. War has never brought peace or harmony to anyone. The basics of war is about taking what somebody else had or preserving what you've already taken from someone else. War has never brought peace. Think about it. When World War II was fought, it didn't bring peace. It's been war ever since. Because after World War II, the European Jews went to Palestine and literally took space from the people who were already there in 1948. They literally did that under the guise that this is our land because we are Jews. And no one talked about the Jews who were already there living next door to the Palestinians. No one talked about that. But that's truly what was taking place. And
Is that justified with Scripture? Is that what they were thinking?
yeah, that's what Now this is the kicker. They try to they justify it with Scripture, but read the Constitution. There's no reference to God in the Constitution whatsoever. Totally secular society. Totally secular society. But yet, the Scriptures are used to justify it, when they're faced with the cold reality of truth. Now, that can be accepted by society because most people don't know that the word Israel was never used to reference a geographical location. Never. The first time that land was called Israel was in 1948. Prior to that, Israel was a nation. It was talking about the people. And the people of which it spoke was based upon the name. When Jacob's name was changed to Israel, it was not changed to Israel like James' name is changed to Walter. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about his essence. It's talking about his sense of enlightenment. Israel, El is God. Israel, it speaks of those who were ruled as God. That's what Israel literally means. So Israel is not some people who came out of Europe who accept what is called, wrongly of course, Judaism, because the word Jew is not in the Scripture, is Judah. And that's what's that's there. But it's being used as an ethnic label in order to justify an evil that the world has turned its back on and chooses not to look at. So what am I saying to you? If the reliance had been on give us this day our daily bread, then you do not take from someone else, because you understand if you seek the kingdom of righteousness, you have everything that you need because it is added to you. Now, am I saying all of that let me hasten to say this, I'm not in any way whatsoever minimizing what Hitler did. That was atrocious what he did. I'm not minimizing that. But I do remember from reading concerning the Holocaust that under one of the encampments there was a mikvah and there was an altar, and above it was written, "Surely God is in this place." And how could you really feel that? Unless your thoughts were beyond this material world. That you understood what was happening to this body was not happening to you. And you did not take it personally. You understood that it was something that had to transpire, even though you might not understand the reason for it. And before anybody jumps all over me concerning this, please understand also that there were just as many Africans who died in the being transported from Africa to this country or the Middle Passage. So that's an atrocity also. And But no one want to talk about that. When we talk about that, we playing the race card. But that's reality. So all of these things that have happened that resulted in war or that began with war, there's no peace. There's still no peace. There's no harmony. And if we were to understand that the bread is the life giver, meaning that living in this moment is all the life that you need for this moment. And speaking of life, I'm not just talking about bio. I'm talking about life, period. Because if you don't live in the moment, then, and you begin to think past this moment, and you see that you believe that you need something that you don't have, then what do? You go get it by taking, or you go get it by putting yourself in debt. How many people have put themselves in debt above their heads because they felt like they needed something that they really didn't need? That in itself is greed. See, greed is not necessarily taking everything someone else has, but you can be greedy and be poor.
Well, I'm wondering if bread isn't also, the circumstances we don't like that show us something about ourselves, or, help you achieve greater awareness.
Continue. Explain what you're saying.
Something falls apart at work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And maybe you recognize something about your attitude that needs to change. That's bread too, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. It is. See, if you look at it from the perspective of attitude, right? The attitude at this juncture should be, of which we speak rather, should be, regardless of what transpires in that day, is there for your life, for your sustenance.
Yeah.
Is there for that. And it's not. See, bread, the things that we need is not always viewed by us as being a positive thing. But that does not change the nature of it simply because we don't view it that way. It doesn't matter how you view it. It is what it is.
And this is a physical, we see the bread as the physical, but the bread this is talking about is spiritual. And so whatever we need spiritually, that, as you said, sustains who we are, not this, but sustains who we are, that or helps us to see who we are more deeply, is what bread is. Because another meaning for bread is that which lifts up too. I just lost it. But anyway, I just looked at that which lifts up. So whatever I need, even if it's that experience that I might think is a bad experience, it's not necessarily a bad experience if it's there to purposefully guide me and direct me to who I really am.
I mean, what did Jesus say to the disciples? The bread of which I eat, you know not of. What is he saying? The thing that I eat, the thing that keeps me full, the thing that sustains me, is not what you're going to buy. You can't buy this. That's what he's saying. It's not bread that was stuck in the oven. I mean, if you really, when I'm teaching, I can teach all night and not eat, and don't be hungry the next day. And a lot of times I forget to eat. And anyone who knows me know that.
We have to remind you that the rest of us want to
Yeah,
eat.
because it's just not something that's important to me. The most important thing to me is what I do, and that is seeking the kingdom so that I can deal with the principles and relating to other people. That's it. That's the thing that sustains me. And my desire is to be out of the earth the moment that that's no longer needed or that I'm not doing it. That's it. So the whole concept of bread is much, much deeper. And to take it a step further, every single thing in our lives is there to remind us of a spiritual reality that we have not necessarily become aware of. Everything in our lives. it does not matter what it is.
Well, I think what you're saying I definitely resonates with me is the before the bread, the idea of sustenance. There's sustenance for the body, there's sustenance for the spirit, or if you want, your essence. But I agree with you. If you expel a certain amount of energy, whether it's exercise, some form of exercise, which could actually be another, just a kind of focused involvement. In my case, a lot of times, it's as if I've eaten. So there is something about that spiritual other exercise that supplies a certain, the body benefits from as well.
Yes, absolutely.
I had originally another sort of point about sustenance, but it's not a hard line between what you need for your physical body and what you need for your spirit. You have experiences in life where I can skip that meal, I'm full. I haven't eaten, but I feel full because of something that happened in that other realm.
Yeah.
Right? And so then now of course you get into the whole notion of what you do to corrupt the bread and its impact.
And
So if you play with the type of sustenance, and then the synergistic effect of that is a sort of less qualitative or more, you know what I'm saying, you eat, I don't know.
Janice, your example is terrific. Something happens at work, and you make a decision what you're going to do with it. It makes it worse. You contaminated the bread. But had you let it ride because you didn't know how to approach it, then you become stronger as a result of it. By virtue of seeing the hand of enlightenment in that, as opposed to nobody's going to run over me and I'm going to make sure, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And that example flows directly into verse 12. As when I blow it, forgive me my debts.
Where are those verses?
6th chapter of Matthew. Starting with the 8th verse, I think, 7th or 8th verse.
That is not where it needs to be
Just off on a little tangent. So again, the idea, what unleavened bread is. I was just trying to think of it in the same sense of bread sustenance. Because I'm sitting here trying to think, you can't make bread without some yeast. There's yeast in the air. That's what sourdough is.
Yeah.
Which makes it particularly tasty in my mind. But
I prefer sourdough.
It's a natural yeast. In fact, if you use man-made yeast, it kills the natural yeast and you wind up with Wonder Bread, basically.
Yeah.
But so that whole thing about yeast, unleavened bread, unleavened bread, because I can understand yeast spreading through the bread, influencing the nourishment that's in the, but
It says a little yeast leavens the whole loaf.
well, yeah.
So it doesn't take much to contaminate it.
Contaminate being a neutral term.
Yeah. Not contaminated in terms of being
No,
dirty,
it spreads.
but
It means-
contaminated in terms of not. When I use the word contaminated, please understand, I'm talking about something that's not fulfilling the purpose for which it is there. It's given.
So, wait, you're using it in a negative term?
No.
No, I would use it in neutral.
You're right, because it's neutral, we make it
Contaminate
negative.
just means it mixes.
We make it negative or
You
positive.
make it negative or positive, or what,
Yeah.
yeah.
The approach to it,
It's just telling you the phenomenon.
the job again, the way you approach it, makes it determines whether it's light or darkness. Okay,
You're the yeast.
you don't know what to do with that, do you? I'm going to, I'm not going to the other verse now, because I don't want us to just start and not get further than finish to bring some sense of understanding, because when we start talking about the whole concept of forgiveness, that in itself is tremendous. And my God is so misunderstood. So, okay, are we done? Any questions? Okay, and you are